Zaitsev. Ooh, thank you, Melissa. My name is Angelina Zaitsev, and I am the Collection Services Librarian for HathiTrust, and I'm joined by Melissa Stewart. Melissa, do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. Hello, I am Melissa Stewart. I am the assistant for HathiTrust, and I'm going to be assisting Angelina today.
Which I am so glad for. So today we are covering the topic of discovering the HathiTrust Digital Library Collection, and so hopefully I will be able to answer any and all of your questions that you have about HathiTrust. So as Melissa has mentioned, we wanted to give you a sense of the protocol for how we're running the session today. So we have turned off your videos and your microphones at this time in order to minimize the background noise and distractions that can occur during these kinds of webinars. You are welcome to use the chat window to ask questions. However, Melissa, can you quickly type in the chat window to practice that so that people know where to look? Thanks. So feel free to add any questions there as they come to you, and we'll pause periodically to answer those questions. And finally, a recording of this presentation and the slides will be shared afterwards with all attendees. Okay, so this is our plan for today. First, I'm going to go over what is in the HathiTrust collection. Then I will cover our access policies and how to explain those access policies in some depth. And then finally, we will turn to the HathiTrust Digital Library interface and go through that interface. And I'll also conclude with a few extra slides that may contain information of interest to you all. So I should mention that two of my assumptions today from which I'm operating are that one, everyone watching is a member and has member access privileges, and two, everyone watching works in a library and is familiar with concepts common to the profession. If neither of these applies to you, you are welcome to continue watching. There just may be a few moments where what I'm talking about is less relevant to you, so keep that in mind. Okay. So what is in the HathiTrust collection? On this slide here, you can see the current numbers for the repository. We recently hit 15 million total items. So that number represents the number of unique digital objects in our collection. And if we're talking about how many titles or bibliographic records we have, this breaks down into 7.5 million book or monograph titles and 418,000 serial titles. We also have about 799,000 US federal government documents. That number is at the item level, and also about 5.8 million items in the HathiTrust collection are open to the public. So the distribution of languages in HathiTrust has stayed pretty consistent over the years. English, unsurprisingly, makes up about 50% of the collection, and then the other languages in the top 10 include European languages such as German, French, and Spanish, and then we start to stray into the Asian continent with Russian, Chinese, and Japanese languages as well. So the top 10 languages make up about 87% of the collection, and the remaining 13% of the collection is made up of a very long tail of 451 other languages. In terms of when materials were published, the largest portion of the HathiTrust collection was published in the 1900s and later. So there's this odd little bump also here from 1900 to 1909, and that's actually an artificial bump. It is the result of missing or incomplete dates in the bibliographic records, and because of how we handle copyright, all of those missing items with missing dates get moved into this 1900 category. One way of looking at the subject matter of HathiTrust materials is to use the Library of Congress classification classes. This may help you in determining which of your users may find HathiTrust more useful. Perhaps unsurprisingly, the language and literature class is our most heavily represented area. There's also a lot of content related to social sciences, as well as history, world history specifically. So keep in mind that this data on this slide is at the title or record level. So there are far more volumes than there are records. And also we only have LCC classes in about 60% of our records. So this is just a further breakdown of the classes into subclasses. Our most popular subclass is the PQ subclass, which covers French literature, Italian, Spanish, and Portuguese literature. And then we continue to see that history and literature are very popular. So where does content come from? And when thinking about the HathiTrust collection, it's important to think about the origins and the provenance of the collection in order to understand its strengths and limitations. So one thing to keep in mind is that HathiTrust, we here do not scan any of the content in our collection ourselves. Rather, our member libraries scan materials at their institutions or through vendors and contribute those to HathiTrust. So as a result, the HathiTrust digital library tends to mirror the collections of our libraries. The University of Michigan and the University of California are our most prolific contributors, followed by other institutions that are part of the Big Ten Academic Alliance. And the University of Texas is another popular, prolific contributor. So we have also a total of 52 libraries that contribute content, so that results in a variety of materials. I also want to highlight some of the unique collections that our members have contributed. The Universidad Complutense de Madrid is one of the oldest universities in the world. It's been around since 1293, which I can't even fathom how old that is. And they have contributed a number of Latin, Spanish, and French documents from the 1500s to 1800s. So if you're interested in specifically church history and the Catholic Church, these are some really interesting documents to look at. Keio University from Japan, is also one of the oldest universities in Japan, and they've contributed 92,000 Japanese and some Chinese language materials. Then there is the Islamic manuscripts collection that was contributed by the University of Michigan. So these are 8th through 20th century manuscripts. And one of the really interesting things about this Islamic manuscripts collection is that it was the focal point of a collaborative cataloging project that was run by the University of Michigan, where catalogers from all around the world worked together to provide these really beautifully and detailed catalog records. I never thought I would say a catalog record was beautiful until I saw these records. So if you're interested, you should definitely check those out. And then the University of Texas at Austin in 2016, they contributed 460,000 volumes from their Benson Latin American collection. And we do have quite a significant collection of US federal government documents. So I would like to point out that one of our initiatives in HathiTrust is that we are trying to build a comprehensive collection of United States federal government documents. So to that end, we've collected over, I believe that number was 799,000 documents, and that breaks down into 415,000 bibliographic records. So in addition to collecting federal documents, we also are building a federal documents registry, where we are attempting to gather catalog records for all US federal government documents ever created. So we feel that this is necessary to do this work in order to know when have we collected all of the US federal government documents. So by building the registry, we are able to identify the entire corpus, and then in the HathiTrust Digital Library, we can work on collecting those materials. If you're interested in learning more about what federal documents we currently have in the collection, I would recommend checking out this Federal Documents Collection Profile, which came out just last month and provides more details about what's in HathiTrust. So it's important to also keep in mind the formats, the digital formats of the content. Most of our content is not born digital materials. Rather, our libraries went and scanned the materials that are held on their shelves, and these tend to be book-like materials. I say book-like because we do have things like manuscripts and bound newspapers. So keep that in mind. These materials were scanned primarily in TIFF and JPEG 2000 formats at really high resolutions. We also have plain text OCR that was derived from those images so that we could search within all the books in our collection. And then finally, when a user is downloading content from the digital library and they click that download PDF link, those PDFs are generated on demand. They're not stored in the repository. So if you are ever experiencing frustration when that PDF download box is taking a while to finish, keep that in mind that these PDFs are being generated on demand. They're not stored in our collection. So that's why it can take some time, especially if it's a book that has thousands and thousands of pages. So also worth knowing is who digitized the collection. So the biggest vendor for content in our collection was Google. They have scanned about 95% of the collection, and Google has imposed these download restrictions on those PDFs, on that content. Those materials were also primarily scanned in black and white. They did attempt to scan color images in color, but there may be some errors where they didn't correctly do that. And because this is a large-scale mass digitization project, the quality of those materials can vary. It can be of very high quality, but it can also be of less great quality. The Internet Archive also scanned about 3.7% of the collection, and these materials have no download restrictions. So if you ever see a watermark that says digitized by Internet Archive, you should be able to download it without problem. Internet Archive materials were scanned at full color, so as a result, those file sizes tend to be significantly bigger than the Google content. And what that means for you as the end user is that it can take a lot longer to download an Internet Archive book than it can take to download a Google book. So we also have a tiny percentage of our collection, 1.48%, that was digitized by, for example, digital conversion units at our libraries, or sometimes our libraries would contract out with vendors to scan their materials. So there may be various restrictions on this content, and these do tend to be higher quality because there is more manual oversight of these materials, and they tend to be very carefully created. So I mentioned a few times in my last slide about the quality of content. I want to talk about this a little bit more. So before content is ingested, it must pass our rigorous validation specifications. And these specifications address formats, compression, image resolution, metadata, all those other technical things that can be captured and recorded through automated means. However, the validation that we're doing at the beginning does not detect missing or damaged pages or bad scans. So related specifically to the Google Books project, we know that quality has been an important issue with these materials. When you digitize millions of books at scale, errors are kind of inevitable. OCR algorithms are not foolproof. Books that have been sitting on shelves for decades are not often in the best condition, and also people make mistakes. However, considering the vast number of materials that have been digitized through mass digitization projects, it is remarkable how infrequently we find errors. And when we do find errors, we have a variety of ways to address the quality problems. For example, Google is constantly working to improve their processing and analysis tools. So when we are notified that there is a problem with a Google book, we can often go back to Google, get a better copy, download a better copy of that book from Google, and often that solves the problem. If that doesn't solve the problem, we can then contact our staff contacts at Google and work with them to manually resolve those issues. So when you notice that there are problems with a book, do let us know so that we can initiate that workflow and try to get a better copy in our collection. And if you're interested more generally in quality, I would also recommend this blog post that is linked here at the bottom, and it describes some of the common problems, quality problems, and how they can be created as a result of the condition of the original print or just through the scanning process. So I'd like to pause for a second and see if there have been any questions so far.
Remember, you can type the questions into the chat window.
Okay, I'm going to go on, but if anyone has any questions about this section that I just covered, feel free to type it in later and we'll still get to it. Okay. So now I'd like to talk a little bit about our access policies and how those work. So as you may have noticed, you are not able to access all of the content in the HathiTrust collection. Although we have about 15 million volumes, only 5.9 million of those volumes are available in full view. And I want to define these terms, limited view and full view. When a book is labeled as limited search only in our collection, that typically means that you can search within that book, but you can't see the pages of the actual book. And full view means that you can search within the book and also see the pages. So there are a few different copyright statuses or access statuses that are correlate to the full view books. There are the books that are in the public domain worldwide, so anyone or anywhere around the world can view them. And in addition to those public domain worldwide books, we also have the U.S. federal government documents, which do not have any copyright restrictions, so those are also available to users worldwide. And then we have about 13.5% of our collection, which is only viewable to users located in the United States. And finally, there's this tiny sliver of 0.27% of the HathiTrust collection, where we have received permission from copyright holders, such as publishers and authors, to make those materials available in our collection. So 0.27% may not seem big, but 0.27% of 15 million items does come out to about 40,000 items. So that is actually a lot of materials that have been opened through permission. So typically when a user asks us, why can't I access this book, they're talking about one of two things, either being able to view the book or being able to download the book. So the viewability of the book is determined by two factors, the copyright status of the book itself and the geographic location of the user. So the copyright status of a book is derived from a few different things. For most of the books in our collection, we just look at the catalog records and are able to detect the dates and locations of publication. So our algorithm is posted on our website if you're interested in the specific details of that, of how we do that date and location detection. In addition, we have a manual copyright review project, CRMS, where volunteers from our member institutions look at our limited view books and try to determine whether a book is or is not copyrighted. So we are currently looking at books that are published in the United States between 1923 and I think it's 1977 or 1963. I'm never sure of that cutoff date. But we have a project just beginning right now to look at another batch of those materials. And also I mentioned that rights holders can fill out a permissions agreement to make those books available in our collection. So then where a user is physically located can also determine what they are able to see. For certain materials, we only know the copyright status for users located in the United States. There are some materials that may be more widely available, but we take kind of a conservative stance, and we only make materials available when we know that we can make them available. So being able to download is impacted by two main factors. One is whether a user is or is not affiliated with one of our member libraries. And we know that based on whether that user logs in or not. That is the only way we know if a user is affiliated with a member. And then being able to download a book is also impacted by whether the digitizing vendor or the contributing library has requested that there be restrictions on their content. So that's a lot of information, I know. So I'm going to break it down here a little bit further. So anybody anywhere can read public domain and open access works on our website. They can also search across the full text of the entire collection. And I am not really going to talk about this much, but scholars are also able to receive data sets of public domain content. They're also able to mine text and data, both of public domain content, and recently we have a pilot project coming out where researchers can mine the text of copyrighted content. And so both of those last two activities can be done via the HathiTrust Research Center. In addition to what anybody anywhere can do, members are able to download public domain and open access works, and they also are able to take advantage of two access services that we offer only to members, one of which is to provide access to their users who are blind or have print disabilities, and also they're able to get access to replacement copies for lost and damaged print copies. So, to reiterate, to get access to the member benefits, always remember to log in. When I go into the user interface, I will show how to log in. And I want to just briefly talk about the access service that we provide for users with print disabilities, because this is an incredible service that we are so excited to offer. Through this service, users that are blind or have print disabilities are able to access all of our content. This is not just the 5.8 million books that are in the full view. They're able to access all 15 million books. And this is a mediated access service, which means that a staff member at one of our university libraries has to register with us in advance. And then when one of their eligible users contacts that staff member, the staff member is able to go into our interface and then download the item that was requested and send it back to the user. So please do talk this service up with your local Office of Disability Services, because we do want to see this service being used. Going back to general access policies, how do you know what you are able to do with a book? When you're looking at a book in our collection, and I will show this in a bit, But in the left sidebar, you will see this about this book sidebar section, and it includes the information, some information about what you can do. So for example, in this space travel book, we see that the rights here are listed as public domain Google digitized. What this means, what this statement means, is that anybody in the world, regardless of whether they're in the United States or outside of the United States, can view this book. But because it was Google digitized, the user needs to be affiliated with a HathiTrust member library in order to download it. So here under this Get This Book, there's the text of partner login required. So going on to the next example, the 5 Laws of Library Science. This book was actually opened with a Creative Commons license by the publisher. So anybody, anywhere can download this book. And then in the third example, Around the United States by Bicycle, this book has a rights statement of public domain in the United States, and that's it. So I assume, based on this description, that this book was digitized by Internet Archive, and there are no download restrictions. And however, it is only available to users located in the US. Okay, so I want to pause. I know that was a lot of information about access, and copyright, and see if there are any questions about what I just covered.
There are a couple of questions, Angelina.
Okay. All right, excellent.
First question, are the restrictions on the Google content listed on the HathiTrust website?
So they are indicated in this way when you're looking at an individual book. And in addition, on our help pages, we describe the restrictions for Google content. So, but if the question is about, are the contracts posted on the website? No.
Okay, next question. Is there an organized effort to increase the number of open access Creative Commons content in HathiTrust?
Not at HathiTrust itself. However, we do know that some of our member institutions have undertaken projects where they have reached out to specifically some of their faculty and their on-campus authors and worked with them to fill out our permissions agreements and get those back to us. I think also another common thing is that some departments and schools at different institutions have been really interested in opening their publications, and we've also seen a lot of university publications being opened. Is there anything else?
Nope, no more questions right now.
Okay, great. All right, so we're halfway through, and I want to go into the interface at this time, and what I'm going to walk us through right now is how to use the catalog search, how to use full text search, the different ways that you can interact with a book in our collection, and how to create personal collections. So you can follow along by going to our URL, www.HathiTrust.org, and I am going to switch to my browser. Okay. Okay. So this is the homepage for the HathiTrust Digital Library. And as you can see, the most important thing that we have privileged in our homepage is the search bar. So there are quite a few things to notice about this search bar. First and foremost, there are 2 different ways that you can search materials. There is full text search, which searches within the text of all 15 million books in our collection. So as you can imagine, if you're searching for a very common phrase, for example, Apple, and you are going to get a lot of results because apple can show up within the text of a book many, many different times. So be careful when you're using the full text, and I would encourage you to use more complex phrases and perhaps even use the advanced full text search. There's also catalog search, which allows you to search within the catalog records of all of our content. So these catalog records were created by our member libraries and provided to us when they contributed the content to our collection. So keep that in mind, because the catalog records can be of varying quality and may follow very different practices because they come from around the United States, Canada, and the world. So first and foremost, I'm going to do a full text search. And let's imagine for our purposes today that I am interested in finding materials related to Mrs. Oliphant, or Margaret Oliphant, who was an author, a Victorian author that was very prolific. She wrote over 100 books and was very popular in her time, was forgotten for some time, and then has started to become a little bit, has been kind of rediscovered more recently. So I am going to do a full text search for Mrs. Oliphant, which is the name that she primarily used when she was writing. And as we can see, we immediately have 243,000 items. That's a lot of materials. I'm definitely not going to be able to read all of those books. So as you can see in the full text search, the search results breaks down into all of the items, which includes all full view items and all limited view items. But you can also switch to the full view tab, which will reload and provide you with the search results that are full view for you. So you may, if you are only interested in searching for materials that you can actually access, then it is worthwhile to just use the full view only tab. If you want to just always restrict your search results to full view only, I would recommend also just checking this little checkbox under the search bar, which will allow your search to complete and provide you with full view results only. So what if I did that search in catalog search? I'm just going to click on the tab, hit the magnifying glass for search, and we see a very different results. So right now I am seeing 479 search results as opposed to the 200-some thousand that I saw with full text search. What this means is that there are 479 full view books where Mrs. Oliphant is listed somewhere in the catalog record. So, right. In addition to just using the search bar, we can also do the advanced catalog search, for example. So if I wanted to limit my author to Mrs. Oliphant and say I'm specifically interested in, let's see, Three Gentlemen, which was, I believe, one of her novels. We get 3 titles as a result, and they're all full view as well. Now, if we wanted to do an advanced full text search, we get more complicated options. We can define the parameters of our search in a few different ways. We can add additional search fields. We can limit it by years of publication, language, and the original format fields. So let's say I want to do Mrs. Oliphant, and let's say I am specifically interested in doing a search for, I want to know what the contemporaries of Mrs. Margaret Oliphant were saying about her and other novelists. So I'm going to kind of kind of shorthand for finding reviews of her books. I'm going to go with novelist, adding an asterisk so that it can search for both novel, anything that follows the novelist, and novels. I'm going to change my parameter to or and go ahead and search. So 37 results. Oh, this is not what I expected. Oh, I see. This is where we are trying to be more careful with the operators that we have input, because I accidentally was not paying attention to what I selected over here. Okay. Live demonstrations are always exciting. Okay. Novel lists in, let's say, let's go limit that to title only, because we assume that, okay. All right, now that is more what I was expecting. Okay, so in the search results, I do see quite a few books that might be of interest to me. For example, this Women Novelist of Queen Victoria's Reign, a book of appreciations. Oh, but Mrs. Oliphant is listed as one of the potential authors. That's not exactly what I want, because I want to read about her, not what she wrote. So let's look at this Victorian Novelist by Lewis Melville book instead. I've opened it in a separate tab, and so the book has opened. So the book is currently in flip mode, which is giving you the experience of that you would get with a original print book. So you can just like flip through the pages quickly if you're in this mode. You can also switch the view mode to scroll view if that is easier for you to scroll down the pages. You can look at the thumbnail view, which I sometimes use just to see what's happening at a high level in the book. If you're interested specifically in the plain text, the text that we have detected from the page images, you can switch to that mode as well. So some of our users who use screen readers find the plain text mode to be more useful than some of the other modes. Okay, so now that I'm looking at this book, I'm curious about what I can do with it. Looking in the left sidebar are some of these things that I mentioned earlier. I see here that the rights statement for this book is public domain in the United States and Google digitized. So as a result, I will not be able to download this whole book unless I log in. However, I will be able to download a page at a time, or I can buy a copy actually. So there are a few libraries that have contributed their content to our collection, and they also participate in print-on-demand books programs primarily through Amazon, I think is their main source. So you can also recommend some of your users to buy a copy option. If you use a screen reader, you can switch to the text-only view of this item. And basically that just strips out the CSS formatting from the page. So you're mainly left with the text and the headings and like some of the bibliographic information. If you keep scrolling down the search bar, you'll also see the ability to add to a collection. I'm not currently logged in, so it doesn't show any of my collections, but So I'll do that in a second. And also you see a few different options to share the book. So I'm going to log in right now so that so that I can take advantage of all of my membership benefits. And something to keep in mind is that when your institution joined HathiTrust, at the beginning of that process, we worked with folks at your campuses so that you can log into HathiTrust with your current campus login. So I technically worked with the University of Michigan, and as a result, I log in with the University of Michigan. But you can select your institution from this very long drop-down list and then hit the continue button. And it takes me to, normally it would take me to my familiar University of Michigan login screen, but because I'm already logged into my browser, it just grabs the data from the browser where I have previously logged in and just automatically logs me in. So now I see at the top it says, hi, Angelina Nikolaevna Zaitsev. I see that I can now add this to any of my collections, and I have a long list of them. And I'm also able to now download the whole book. So as you can see, it's now building the PDF, as I mentioned, because these PDFs are not stored in HathiTrust. We generate them on the fly to minimize the storage space that we would otherwise spend on that. Okay. So in addition, you can, if you're interested, say I wanted to create a collection of all of the materials related to Margaret Oliphant. I could then add it to a collection or create a new collection. I don't currently have a collection that is related to this topic, so I'm going to create a new one. This is Oliphant. I give it a collection name, I can add a description, and I can select to make it either private or public. And you can change these views as you want. You can switch between making it private or public as you want. So saving those changes, and now I get this notice that this item is in your collection, Mrs. Oliphant. Wonderful. Another thing that I may want to do is search within this book. So I've typed at the top, there are a few different ways that you can navigate in this book as well. If I wanted to, I could jump to a specific page number. For example, if we're currently on the table of contents in this book, and scrolling down, I do see that there is a section about Mrs. Oliphant that begins on page 258. So if I type that number in, I can go ahead and hit go, and it will take me to page 258, where I get to read about the prodigious work of Mrs. Oliphant. I could also, however, if my search term isn't showing up in the table of contents, I could search within the book. So I'm doing that. I've entered the search term and hit find. And it's taking a moment to complete because it is searching across all of the text in this book. And there are 17 results, 17 pages where the term Oliphant shows up in this book. So I can scroll through all of them, find one that's of interest, and go to that specific page. And ta-da, I am on my page. Okay. So that is the various ways that you can interact with a book in this view. But if you're interested in learning more about this title, you could do that by going back to view the full catalog record. So when I go to the full catalog record, I see some basic bibliographic data. I don't see all of the bibliographic data because in order to make our interface more user-friendly, we have stripped down the mark fields that we display in this public interface, and just display the fields that our users tend to be more interested in. However, if you, as a librarian, want to see the full MARC record, what you can do is go up to the address bar and modify the URL that is displayed there by adding either .marc or .xml to the end of this address. Hit enter, and when the page reloads, you will see the full MARC record or the full XML record. So this has a lot of information in it, like I see the OCLC number, I see the table of the contents in the 505 field. There's also the fields at the bottom from CID downwards are fields specific to HathiTrust. But if you love to read MARC records, feel free to do that. Going back to the public view of the record, I also see that there are several different copies of this book. So that is not entirely surprising. For some materials we all know, some books are just held in many different collections. And when sometimes these digitization projects were going on, especially in the early days, duplicate detection was not happening. So, right, so we may have duplicate copies of some books in our collection. Oh, right. Oh, and then the one other thing I want to mention about the catalog records is that you are able, is a pretty cool functionality that we don't talk much about. But let's say that you find in your search a limited view book that you are interested in viewing. So for example, this book, The Novels of Mrs. Oliphant, A Subversive, I apologize, I forgot to turn this off. I need to. So based on that title alone, I probably would really enjoy reading this book. So if I wanted to, though, I could do search within the text of this book. Let's see, I could search for whatever term I am particularly interested in to verify if this book is relevant to my research or not. So, I mean, I'm going to do Oliphant. We know that Oliphant exists in this book, so this isn't a great example. But when you do a search within a limited view book, rather than getting the full verbose results that we got with a full text search, we get a list of the pages, the page numbers, and how many matching terms show up on that page. So there are 278 pages with multiple matching terms on those pages. So I know that this book is really relevant to what I'm interested in. So alas, I can't get access to this book in HathiTrust. However, what I can do is go to this Find in the Library link, which is available in this interface, or if you went back to the full catalog record, you see it here, locate a print version. So when you click that link, Find in the Library, you are actually taken to WorldCat. So this is a great way to talk about the value of HathiTrust to your users. They can search within the limited view books to identify materials that are relevant to their research, and then go into WorldCat to see what libraries near them have a print copy of this book, and then maybe they can request that print copy via the interlibrary loan service at your library. So I think I've mostly covered what I want to cover. I did mention earlier about building collections, and so you can look into this a little bit more. There are a few different tabs you can switch between when you go to this collections view. If I wanted to see just my collections, I could see all 42 of those collections. I should probably trim those down a little bit. You can also see the featured collections. And the one thing you can do in collections, which is pretty cool, is that you can search within collections. So if you find that there are 100 volumes of a serial that you want to search across, you could search across all of those books by building a collection. All right, so I think that is most of what I wanted to talk about today to show in the interface. The last thing that might be useful is that we do have help pages on our website, and you can explore those in more depth. Using the digital library is probably going to be the most helpful page because I've talked about logging in and searching and printing and downloads and things like that. Okay. Melissa, are there any questions at this time before I go back to my slides?
It doesn't look like we have any questions right now.
Okay, great. So I will continue on. Okay. So that's how I was talking mostly about how to interact with content and with our public interface, but there are other ways to interact with HathiTrust data. You can download the bib records in bulk by going to this hathitrust.org/data page. You can request a data set at the datasets page. We also offer both a data API and a bib API if you want to programmatically query the HathiTrust collection and get bib records or some data back, or some pages or content back. And also the Hathi files provide some basic data elements about all of the HathiTrust collection. So if you want to do some querying about what's in the HathiTrust collection, you might find that of use. If you're interested in more information about text mining or data mining, do check out the HathiTrust Research Center. The HathiTrust Research Center is basically an organization that wants to support and provide tools for scholars that do this data mining work. So there are some tools that they offer on their website at analytics.hathitrust.org. You can also take advantage of a few different features and services that they offer. The mini grants through the Advanced Collaborative Support, those are pretty cool because rather than getting money, a researcher can get staff time, which, like, if you're just beginning to do data analysis and aren't really confident in your programming skills, those advanced collaborative support projects could be particularly helpful. And I also do want to mention that HTRC did recently receive an IMLS grant to develop these train the trainers kinds of workshops that teach librarians how to work with HathiTrust data and take advantage of the HTRC services. So I have a couple more minutes, so I'm going to go through these last few slides here. So something to keep in mind as you are thinking about how to implement HathiTrust in your arsenal of services is that there are many different ways to market HathiTrust. You could list and describe HathiTrust in your LibGuides. I used to think that this was not a particularly effective means of marketing HathiTrust, but I recently saw that one of our members at the beginning of January, they went through and added HathiTrust to all of their LibGuides, with the result that there are 52 of their LibGuides that now link to and provide information about HathiTrust. And we definitely saw an increase in the number of referrals from that library's website. So that can have an impact. You can also add records for HathiTrust content to your catalog. We offer those records via OAI. You can retrieve them directly from OCLC, or you can use a number of discovery services such as Summon, Primo, and World Share Management System to incorporate HathiTrust records in your catalogs. Also, I want to talk briefly about the shared print program. So the goal of the shared print program is to ensure that for every digital copy in HathiTrust, there is a corresponding print copy so that our digital collection is backed up by a stable and reliable print copy. So we have just launched that program in the past year. Lizanne Payne, our program officer, has been working really hard to get us through phase 1, and she will be reporting out about phase 1 soon. But it is exciting that 50 plus libraries are participating in phase 1. So if you're interested in that, keep an ear out for more news. And for more information, you can see these pages and contact us through the feedback@issues.hathitrust.org email address. Oh, one of the things I did not mention, I'm actually going to go back to the user interface really quickly because this is important. Whenever you are in our collection and you notice that there is a catalog record that has a problem, or there are the scans have a problem, you can actually report this to us by clicking this feedback link, and a form will pop up that will allow you to provide some information about what's going on. So when you notice that problem, click that link, and that form will detect the page that you are on when you click that link. So that's super helpful to us in order to help us identify and diagnose the problem and fix it. All right. And finally, the last thing I want to mention is that we do put out monthly newsletters where you can receive information about what's happening in HathiTrust and find out more ways to engage with us. So I think that brings me to the end. Melissa, are there any questions at this time?
Yeah, we do have a couple questions, Angelina.
Great, good.
First question, are all the users at a contributing library able to view their scanned books?
No. So unfortunately, we are not able to do that. We do have to follow the copyright regime, which we provide access to users based on copyright law, not based on who originally owned the books. So even if your library contributed those books to HathiTrust, you are not able to access them unless we have determined that they are in the public domain.
Next question, can you elaborate on getting access to lost or damaged print materials?
So that is a service that we have been trying to get going for a while. There are some problems with it. Partially, one of the main difficulties is how the legal requirements of Section 108, and this is where I don't know much about this, but because of the legal, I believe the Section 108, or is it Section 508? I'm already revealing my lack of knowledge. But because of the way we understand that part of the copyright law, there are certain technical requirements for how we have to implement the service, and we have been running into some problems with that as a result. We are continuing to look into how we can scale this service up so that we can offer it to members in a more robust fashion. So that's all I can really say at this time. It's not great, and we don't love it.
Are HathiTrust materials used to fill interlibrary loan requests? For example, book chapters sent in print?
Every time this question comes up, I have to go back and check our documentation, and I'm not entirely sure. For the limited view books, we definitely can't do that. For the public domain books, if there aren't any download restrictions, then anybody can download it. But I can't really remember what our policy is for those Google materials. Whoever that is, can you send me an email and I can follow up over email because I do need to check our documentation on that policy. And is that it?
I think that's all we had, and it's right at 5 o'clock.
Excellent. So I'm going to type my email address into the chat window, although you may already have it. So feel free to email me at that email address, or generally reach out to us with any of your questions and requests to feedback@issues.hathitrust.org. So I'll stay on for another couple of minutes in case anyone else has any additional questions. But otherwise, thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Oh, great.
All right, it doesn't look like we have any other questions. I guess I will sign off then.
Okay.
Thanks all. Thanks, Melissa.